I just want to give you guys a fair warning that this is not my best work. I really do apologize, especially for those of you looking for a golden brown stain and seal technique using the Keda Dye golden brown stain powder. I did this video a little bit out of order, but I'm going to just kind of go through this. I ended up taking a dropper full of water. I ended up mixing a large piece size of the Keda golden brown stain powder into that water. Then I take the Spar, the black label Spar urethane, and I add about a half a cup. And then I add that liquid into the Spar urethane, and then I just mix the two liquids until they're mixed nicely. I did this video out of process a little bit. I started spraying, and then I realized that I didn't actually show the mixing and how I ended up mixing the dyes, the wood dye, into the sealer. So I really apologize for that. That's a pine. That's a sugi pine. That's a straight pine, and this one is a maple that I ended up doing a special technique on. I'm trying to do a color scheme for someone that I can't mention, but basically what I ended up doing was I took the Keda Dye golden brown, the black stain powder. I mixed it at a 1/2 teaspoon ratio to 4 ounces of water, and then I put that down as my wash coat. I sanded that back, and then I took the Keda Dye walnut brown, the liquid dye, and then I mixed that at a 1:1 ratio, where I ended up taking 30 drops to 30 drops of denatured alcohol, and then I mixed that together, and then I laid that down as a wash coat, and then I sanded that back, and now I'll be spraying this golden brown tinted sealer over the top of it. I'll have the golden brown on the back side as well for a comparison, just to kind of see. But, you know, there's some straight pines in here. There's some Douglas fir, some sugi techniques. But you'll see this as I go along here. So on this video, I ended up doing 2 coats on all of the pieces except for the one pine that's on the furthest right, which I'll point it out when I end up getting to that part. But otherwise, they all have 2 coats with 1 seal coat of the clear Spar urethane over the top of it. I've gone over that before. You know, it's just a lot easier to end up fixing a clear coat scratch than it would be for the color. But this is the Douglas fir. So when I ended up finishing up on the video the first time, I brought the video card up, I put it into the computer, put it into the video editing software, and it just wasn't showing the color like I was seeing it in person. So I went back downstairs, I put a much larger light, a brighter light, color source that was in front of the camera facing towards the wood, and so the color is probably between the two of these. With the bright light, it's almost coming, it's a golden brown, but it's almost shifting a little bit more towards an amber type color, so it's a little bit in between the two of those. That's the piece right there that only has the 1 coat of the golden brown stain over the top. The golden brown tinted sealer. So the rest of them will have 2 coats, and this is the sugi technique with that pine and the 2 coats of the golden brown stain seal over the top with the 1 clear coat. So like I said, I ended up doing this out of order, and some of it's going to be common sense, but there's a lot of people that are just learning. So I thought, well, I really have to go back and show how I mixed it up and things like that. So I hope you guys can kind of bear with me. It's gonna end up still hopefully being a helpful video. This is just a straight pine. Again, this has the 2 coats that's over the top. With a brighter light, it just ends up having a better definition to it. And speaking of definition, that's something that you want to consider when you're using this technique. If you're doing something like this, it's not going to have quite as much depth as if you would put the golden brown stain directly onto the surface, or any of the colors, the wood dye colors for that matter. It's going to act more like a sanding sealer would. So a lot of people don't like to have the light and dark contrast. So sometimes they'll put down a sanding sealer to try to balance that out, to try to keep the color more uniform in its overall wood finish. This kind of technique is going to be something very similar, where you don't actually have to do a sanding sealer. Again, it's not going to end up having quite as much depth or the definition of the wood grain itself, it's still going to have a pretty good definition. It's not really obscuring the wood at all, but it's just something to keep in mind. There's going to be a less contrast as if you were to put it directly onto the wood surface. So in this area here, you can end up seeing on the left-hand side where, I really couldn't see the finish very well at all. Maybe it's just coming across that way on the editor. Sometimes when it gets into a larger video format, it shows up a lot better. But, this color is actually going to be kind of in between the two of these colors. It's a little bit more golden brown. It's not quite as the red tone as what I'm seeing on the video. But again, that may be something just with the way that it's formatted right now. But getting back to the contrast and the light and dark areas, don't get me wrong, this is a very efficient technique that can end up being a huge time saver for somebody that's trying to do a larger project. You just mix the wood dye right into the sealer and spray it out, which is what ended up happening right there on the right side of that board. That curly maple right there is with just the 2 coats of the golden brown and then the 1 coat of sealer over the top. So you can see that it still has very good definition. You still have good depth. It still highlights a lot of the grain. It just doesn't contrast quite as much as if you were to put it directly onto the stain. I'm sorry, the golden stain directly onto the wood surface itself. And even if you did like a sandback, say you did the sandback with the golden brown with the first coat, then you ended up applying a second coat, it would really end up helping pop those grains out. But you could also do that with this technique as well. It also would work well. What I mean by that is, like, if you took the golden stain and you put down a wash coat, sanded it back, and then did this over the top of it, that would also help highlight and contrast those grains. It's also good, like, if you end up doing a project and all of a sudden you realize that it's a little bit light, a little bit dark, or you just want to slightly modify the color. Do a little scuff sand, tint your sealer like this, and you can go over the top of it. So that's another option. So anyways, I hope that this video ends up helping out. Thanks you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank you again so much.